I think the
It's the
gang is
only-
all here, so I would like to call to order this regular board meeting of the Urbana Park District Board of Commissioners for the month of October 2022. The first item is to deal with any remote attendance, but since all 5 commissioners are already here, there's none of that. So let's move on to accepting the agenda. Is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented this evening?
I move we accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions? And since we're all masked up, let's do a roll call vote. We'll start with Cedric.
Aye.
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 And that carries unanimously with all 5 commissioners voting. Takes us now to public comment. And is there anybody here from the public wishing to address the board?
There's nobody here from the public.
As far as I can, well, I mean, some of the, anybody here can be public. So I don't see an indication of that. As I understand it from the agenda, there are no new staff introductions this evening, so that moves us on to Roman numeral 4, the UPDAC report.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm the current UPDAC chair, so I figured I'd come in person this month.
Welcome.
So we had a really great presentation from Matt Lewis, the community program coordinator, about the Splash program. And it really it took up like a very large portion of our meeting, so it was almost 2 hours. And there was just a lot of really great discussion, a lot of great questions, primarily kind of geared towards like how that program is funded. And then a lot of really great questions about like, particularly like what makes a school qualify and things like that, because a lot of people weren't sure why like Thomas Paine and Wiley aren't included in that. So a lot of really good questions and discussion about maybe longer term solutions on how to fund those programs and expanding those possibly to those other 2 schools. So that was really great. As far as reports, Tim reported on just like the Natural Areas Committee going through Crystal Lake Park and having a lot of great water quality improvement and bringing a lot of people in. We talked a lot about the ARPA funding for health and wellness. And we actually have a new member on UPDAC who is actually a City of Urbana employee, Darius White. So we had a lot of really great feedback as far as maybe like ways to approach that to hopefully get as much funding from that as possible. He made the suggestion of maybe asking for more money and then hopes that we get closer to like that target versus asking for the 2.5 and then maybe getting less than that. He suggested actually asking for more and then hopefully getting as close to that as possible. So he had a lot of really great suggestions kind of from the city mindset that were really great. And then we got just a lot of really great updates on capital projects like the UPDAC Pavilion, and it sounds like that's hopefully coming in this month. And then the Crystal Lake Park Road being repaved, and then the lower west lot being closed to kind of finish up the retaining wall. And then at Blair, he let us know that the tennis courts were finished and we are waiting the end of the high school tennis season to replace the fencing. And then I kind of just reminded UPDAC to continue to share information about Park District projects and things like that to gain support. I think a lot of people, because of the signage and things like that, know that health and wellness are coming, but don't really know what it's going to entail. So I think we're hoping to kind of get an update on that. I know we have a lot of new members in UPDAC that haven't seen the plans and kind of what all that is going to include. So I think that'll be a really great reminder and refresher for everybody to kind of spread the word about that project and hopefully getting neighbors and things like that to kind of rally city council to hopefully giving us what we want. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay.
No, it's good. It's good to have you in person. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
It's really good to have the UPDAC represented here in person. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Indeed. Next item of business is our consent agenda. And on the consent agenda for this evening, our approval of the minutes from the 2 meetings in September, the September 6th study session and the September 13th regular board meeting, receipt of the 3 departmental reports that we get every month, administration, planning and operations, and recreation, approval of the monthly paid accounts payable, and action to accept the philanthropy report and gifts listed with gratitude. And that's the extent of the consent agenda this evening. And for those listening in at home, it is the purview of any single commissioner to remove any or all of these items from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. Is there any commissioner wanting to remove anything from tonight's consent agenda?
I move to approve all of the action items on the consent agenda and accept all the information items listed on the consent agenda in an omnibus manner.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and under our rules of the consent agenda at this point, there's to be no further discussion. So we will move directly to the vote with this being on the table and doing a roll call, starting now with Roger.
Aye.
There it is.
Aye.
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 And that carries unanimously with all 5 commissioners voting. That takes us on to our reports section, and the first item is financial reports. Ta-da!
Ta-da! All right, so as per usual, we will begin with looking at our reports that are called our revenue and expenditures for the past 12-month period. This is the preliminary unaudited results for the first 5 months of this fiscal year ending September 30th. Sum 1 is our first page. This is all funds excluding the capital improvement fund. Revenues for this period were $7,501,000. Expenditures $3,816,000. This is surplus, meaning that there is more revenue than expenditure, of $3,686,000. Page 2 is our capital improvements fund only snapshot. Revenues for the 5 months were $248,000. Expenditures $1,807,000. This is a deficit of $1,559,000. Just as a review, due to the bond cycle, it's expected that the capital improvements fund usually is negative. We're just spending it all out now until we get reimbursed. Then page 3, this is a snapshot, district-wide, all funds included. And really here, just the very bottom line is what's important to us, of $15,979,964.96. The following 3 reports captured here are individual fund reports for our main working funds, which is the general, the recreation fund, museum fund, and the indoor pool. Our second set of reports is the treasurer's report. This is a report of the amount of cash the district has in one day, September 30th. All 25 funds are listed with where the cash is invested. And your bottom right-hand corner is our total investments as of September 30th, $19,390,634.18. Page 2. This top section is listing where all of our funds are invested in interest-bearing accounts. Of that $19,391,000, $17,709,000 is out for investments at varying rates. Bottom section of page 2 is our interfund loans, no change. Page 3, this is the
last section of the treasurer's report, and this lists disbursements for the month of September. Vendor payments match the paid accounts payable reports that are in the consent agenda. And total disbursements for the month of September were $784,029.47. I present to you the treasurer's report for audit.
I move we accept the treasurer's report for audit.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, let's do a roll call vote, starting with Cedric.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
and that carries unanimously.
Alrighty. And my last set of reports, these are the capital budget reports. You'll note that the areas highlighted with an asterisk are the areas where there are new activities during the month of September. The first report is the Series 2019A capital budget. We had one expenditure in September, and that was to Fairgram for $3,817, and that had to do with the design for the Crystal Lake road system. Page 2 is our 2022 budget. We had a $300 revenue donation. And I didn't list who the names were. Under expenditures, then, we spent $211. It was towards the Crystal Lake Park tribute. And then we paid Fairgram $48,056 for Crystal Lake Broadway design. That's all for 2022. Capital budget 2021. We had, under construction crew projects, we had $170 to Midwest Rentals for a breaker rental, $320 for miscellaneous hardware and lumber. Blair Park improvements, we had $3,600 paid to All Weather Courts for painting the courts at Larson Park. Meadowbrook Prairie Play planning, $2,113 to Upland Design. Down in the outdoor learning pavilion, we paid Petrie Kuhn $82,000. Then we paid the Urbana Champaign Sanitary District $1,600. That was for our sanitary permit, and $550 to relocate a tree. Then a little further down, we spent $3,745 for more treatment at Crystal Lake, water treatment, and $729 to Upland for a little bit more on Prairie Play. 2020 capital budget. Under recreation small equipment, we paid $1,371 to Shade Solutions, and that was for a deposit for the awning at Phillips Rec Center. Under hardscapes and fencing, we had $3,130 to the Illinois Department of Natural Resources for their application fee, and another $60 for ITEP design at Broadway. Our last one, 2019 budget, we paid $8,100 to commercial builders for 2 exterior doors at Anita Purvis Nature Center. There was no activity on the 2018 or 2017 budget, and in case you want to make a note, I did forget to update the date there. It says August, and it's obviously September. There's no activity on those 2 reports. You just want to make a note. And over to Andy and Derek for some project updates.
I've got some pictures to share as usual. Starting with the road project, and what's kind of stalled us at the moment is the retaining wall at the Lower West Lake House parking lot. Works kind of on hold to progress in the turnaround and new parking areas until we get this retaining wall figured out. We've had some concerns. As part of the specifications, they were supposed to match the color to the best of their ability. For any kind of air pocket or voids that maybe the vibrating of the concrete didn't get, and then create a uniform look with a relief pattern throughout the wall. So this is kind of a progress. This is when they were just starting. The color is lightened up at this point, but it's still different. And as we were inspecting the wall and we made Fairgram aware of our concerns, we started to find some more issues. Some of it being the form liner and form ties showing up through the wall, which shouldn't be. And then some of the concrete, we had some kind of, I guess I'd call it almost heaving on this joint here as well. And so ultimately we've rejected the wall as it currently sits. And our understanding at this point is that structurally everything is good, but aesthetically this is not the wall that we had in our bid and in our specifications here. So Fairgram has asked the subcontractor to continue to excavate down to the footing so they can do a full evaluation structurally. And then from there, we're going to move into next steps on how to best address the overall look of the retaining wall itself. That is yet to be determined. And unfortunately, timing-wise, asphalt's no longer going to be available here probably in another few weeks. And understandably, Open Road does not want to go in and repave that parking lot if we're going to have a lot of construction activity associated with the wall, and we would prefer that they don't as well. So as of yesterday, the remaining portion was excavated from that subcontractor, and Fairgram should be taking a look and evaluating the wall hopefully by the end of this week. They've checked out a lot of it. There's just kind of what the parts that have been hidden is what they still need to review. And all indications at this point, they don't have any concerns structurally, but obviously the look is not what we had envisioned.
So Andy, what we're seeing here on the right, that blank, plain stuff on the base there, yeah.
This was all covered.
Yeah,
so-
okay, that's what I wanted to know.
And here's the
Yeah.
footing.
Yeah, okay,
So this, when we first got it, yeah, the rock and stuff was all up to here.
yeah, okay.
We actually uncovered some rock at one point out there and saw some other, I think it was this part right here, concrete that looked a bit off, which made us raise more concerns, and then really started to, push them to start unearthing more of the wall, so the structural engineer at Fairgram will be able to evaluate, and then we can move on with next steps. So I think, in all likelihood, we may have a new look to the wall, assuming the structure is good in the next couple months, but we're going to have to keep that small area blocked off until the spring, in all likelihood, when the contractor will be able to come back in and do all the associated asphalt work there as well.
Are they thinking they can still patch all of this and get it to look nice?
Are they thinking they still can?
That they,
Is it?
That they will be able to.
that they'll
So
be
this-
able to?
I don't think that's going to be I thought they would be able to come back in and do a skim coat basically and re-press it on there. That's when I initially was getting concerned. And our discussions with Fairgram, that's not going to be a good approach. So there's been some minor surface cracking as well. They're like little hairline cracks that I think it'd be the best interest for us to move to a different type of approach and look there altogether. And so Fairgram's kind of investigating some of those options now. I think what seems likely is probably some sort of stone facade that would then be secured to the wall
And are
So
they,
structurally, it would use the wall, but put veneer on it.
as long as it checks out with our engineers structurally,
yeah.
then we can look at other options. But I think internally we've kind of moved away from doing any sort of kind of patching, color matching, and stamping any further.
so is this something that Fairgram is taking responsibility on financially for fixing because it wasn't the wall in the bid? Or are we going to be asked to spend more?
It would be the contractor
Well,
who would
whoever,
be.
yeah.
We formally rejected it, so we're not paying for that
Okay.
wall as it is. And Fairgram's kind of working with us through that process.
Bummer.
I'll say
It
that the principal at our local Fairgram office is the structural engineer, and he's been great. He's on top of this, and he's managing it carefully. You know, he's walking us through the steps of rejection, how we allow the contractor to come back with their proposed remediation. But he's already got some ideas in his back pocket about things that he thinks would qualify to meet our expectations and requirements.
Yeah, because it really, I mean, without the blotches, it looks great.
Mhm.
Well, the hairline cracks.
Right. These are always tough situations, you know, when you get into a situation like this, it's $100,000 wall.
Right, I mean, it's not
It's a custom touch.
Yeah.
We're not happy. We see flaws. The engineer's checking things out. How you get the resolution is yet to be seen. And it's unfortunate because we were hoping to have things backfilled and repaved and back in order. So we're kind of in a fix. As Derek said, everyone's working hard to get it right, but it's probably going to take some time. And yet, we'll see how committed the contractor is to, you know, coming through with the arrangements.
So Andy, the contractor thinks that a facade might be feasible?
Yeah, assuming that structurally, I mean, that would be just one of the options that we could
Okay,
do.
so there are other options as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the contractor on the wall is actually a sub to the main contractor.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's layers that we're working through.
It's
Wow.
complicated, right?
Okay. On the sanitary bridge, here's just a kind of a snip from the plan set, the new bridge and the existing sanitary bridge. They had a pre-construction meeting last week. They're currently under contract with Stark for the work. Schedule-wise, Stark is looking to start work this winter on the footings for the bridge. And that would require us to lower the lake level. And so probably in the next 2 months, we'll have to do a lowering of the lake. And then Stark will be able to start their work on that. And then the rest of the schedule is basically dependent on the delivery of the bridge. And so the bridge look has changed a little bit. Rather than being a modified bow, it's more of a straight across truss style bridge that'll be 8 foot in length, or in width, sorry, and have a colored concrete brush finished, broom finished path surface as well. And the remaining schedule, I think they have a completion date of September of '23. Stark at the pre-construction meeting said their intention is probably to have this thing done, assuming the bridge delivers in a reasonable amount of time, sometime in the spring. I think we'll have a couple road closures or like a week-long road closure just in this area for bypass pumping, and then probably some other intermittent closures as they have material deliveries and stuff like that as well. But I don't think it'll be a major impact to the Park Road site. We'll try to keep as much open as possible. I think we're actually going to try to maintain bike and ped on the path during the duration of the project. There may be some short amount of times that they have to close that as well, but nothing like what they would have to do for the road.
How long will the lake level have to stay down?
That I'm not sure of. I know it's just for their footing. I don't think they wouldn't be placing the bridge or anything. So it's while they get all that set, if I had to guess, I'd say less than a month, but I honestly don't know for sure. We're targeting it for the winter too, so we make sure we're not affecting all of our new plants around the lake as well.
So this is not a bad time of year to have the lake level way down?
This is when we would want them to do it.
Okay, perfect.
We're also fortunate that the same contractor who did the lake project for us and their restoration ecology contractor are the folks that are doing this work. And so
Okay.
they are motivated to make sure they do it in a way that doesn't impact the plantings.
Yes, they are.
In terms of the funding, you know, the $300,000 that we have coming from DCO, we've confirmed that at the November veto session, DCO will submit for that to be a reimbursement as opposed to funding a new project. That's what we initially submitted for. And the sanitary district understands that there's no certainty that we'll get that money. We're working on an IGA with Matt Deering right now that reflects that. And so the sanitary district felt like it was more important for them to move forward with the project currently under the expectation and hope that that we'll be able to contribute those funds. We have every reason to believe that we will. DCO has conveyed that they're there, but they just couldn't guarantee it.
Mm.
So I think the plan is to bring the IGA to the board in the November board meeting.
Okay, last item, I have a few pictures of the Updeck Learning Pavilion. The image on the left, Nancy, I think you were asking how the pavilion would be delivered. This is it, right here on the left.
There it is.
I wanted to make sure I got at least one picture for you for that one.
Yes.
I actually thought it'd be a little more put together than this, and I talked to the contractor, and he said they did too. But the contractor was really impressed with the quality of it. It's
Oh, good.
pretty heavy-duty stuff.
Good.
So that was delivered last week, I believe, mid-last week. Towards the end of last week, the masonry materials were also getting delivered to the site. So there's been kind of a lot of stuff moving in. And then they're wrapping up a lot of the concrete work that's associated with the pavilion itself here. And here's another angle. This is looking towards the south. You can see where the pavilion posts and the structure of the pavilion itself. This path would go to the nature playscape. And then they're trying to get some of the other concrete work done in the parking area. So this is like a tree island within the parking lot, and then this is kind of the drop-off shoulder zone here that's on the northwest corner of the parking lot. They were trying to get a lot of that done towards the end of last week and early this week, and I think with today and tomorrow, I believe it's supposed to rain. It's probably going to hold them off a little bit longer, but I think here in the next couple weeks, they'll probably have quite a bit of the parking area done, at least the concrete portion. And then the masons and building trades are all starting to come out on site as well and starting to get the building all prepared and conduit put in and wired and everything as well. That's it, I think, for the pavilion. That's all the pictures I had as well. So, yeah.
Is this going to be one that's going to be available to rent, or is it going to be, if it's available, people can use it?
I believe the plan is to rent it
I think we were
outside
actually
of
starting,
camp hours.
we're starting out where it'll be available if it's open,
Yeah.
and then it's for day camp. So with staffing to clean restrooms and those kinds of things, I think we were kind of going to slowly work it into more of a rental space. Does that sound correct to you?
Yep.
Any other questions on capital?
We should definitely have our first, it'll be ready next fall, right?
It'll be hopefully ready by the summer.
Yeah, right, so we could have our first UPTAC meeting there, that'd be a great,
Yep.
that'd be a great,
Fall kickoff.
our
we
fall
were
kickoff, that'd be a
planning
great
that,
place to
yep.
have that, yep.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then to the 2022 planning packet for the GEO bond sale.
Laura, did you have any action or any comments on the packet?
I do not have any other information to add to it unless you folks had any questions as you were going through your board packet. The timetable that's included in here, we're staying true to that. I just received the BINA information. This is a BINA year for us, so we've got to go through the black box and all the good stuff. And that has to be done before November 1st, so working with Chapman and Cutler on that, and so we're on target to get that done. The sale is scheduled for December 8th. You know, the state of our economy, I already complained earlier about the interest rate we're having to pay. Ouch. Big ouch. And it's probably not going to get any better. Probably maybe even a little more painful, but that is what it is. You know, the good thing is, you know, we roll these over every year, so the pain's a little less.
It could be more next year.
So, but what it equates to is $889,000 towards capital for our 2023 capital budget. So, yeah, unless you folks have any other questions about it.
Just a comment. It's interesting on the debt service history. You know, there's been so much talk about tax caps and the big concern of, you know, rampant runaway government taking over. So after in, what, 97, when we were impacted, vote in 96, it's interesting that we've had very few years where the 5% or less kicked in. Obviously, we're over this year, and they're at the 5%, but I guess my takeaway is it was a lot to do about nothing that at least affected our agency. So it's unfortunate that Champaign County voters were duped into believing that that was really a solution. But at any rate, we see it applied for this year. I think it's the only time, other than maybe referendum bumps, that we might have been up. I'd have to go back and look at
Yeah,
years.
2007 was the other,
Okay.
we were at 4.08%.
There you go.
Otherwise, we're really in that
Right,
upper ones, lower twos.
right.
So,
So the intention for holding the BINA hearing is next month. Is that right?
Did I hear you say December?
8th, yeah,
Well, the
8th of November?
timeline is, yes, the
November 8th.
BINA has to be published by November 1st for us to take the public hearing on the 8th,
Which is
at
our
our board
regular
meeting on
hearing.
November 8th.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Which is
And they'll
also
follow
election
that
day.
and then the ordinance.
And I won't be here
For,
on the 8th.
on December?
Oh, no, December will be.
No,
December?
this is
I think that's
No,
the hearing.
November 8th
Oh,
would be
November
the
for-
BINA.
BINA hearing?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I won't
Sorry,
be here
I thought
then.
I heard December.
December 8th will be the actual sale, and then we will
Gotcha. I heard it in reverse.
adopt that ordinance then at the December meeting,
Yep.
December 13th.
Nancy, you'll be out in November?
Yep.
Okay.
Unless there are any questions, there's no action to be taken with this at this moment, this time. That moves us on to the executive director's report.
Sure, just a few updates. I think you noticed the You Belong Here report. It's always got a lot of good information. I think Corky sent along and Mark a picture of the new billboard that's going to be up on North Cunningham Avenue. That'll have a feature of the Urbana. I think there was interest, you know, in trying to promote that more. I think staff had that already planned. But the timing of the interest of trying to get more eyes on our efforts in the outreach with Urbana. So hopefully that'll get a lot of attention. We know that billboards really do catch people's eyes, and that's another way to help promote what we do with that.
Yeah, it just went up this week and it's up for 8 weeks.
8 weeks? Great.
On Cunningham.
Yes.
Yeah, right by the Speedy Loop.
Speedy Lou by the
Yep,
creek.
right down, yep.
Thanks on the number of weeks. Next, just want to recognize Elsie Hedgepeth, who was selected as one of the 40 under 40 for this new class. Just really proud of her. We've had a few other staff over the years achieve that, and it's just wonderful and nice to see them in a good mix of up-and-coming people, and we're very fortunate to have the great staff that we do. Just wanted to mention, staff was participated in the Pride Fest. We had a really great turnout, a lot of people walking in the parade. I think we just casually observed maybe 3,000 to 4,000 people along the parade routes in downtown.
Wow.
After there was music and more people came, so I don't know if there's any way to get a real count in a parade, but it was packed. And it was very vibrant, very exciting. We talked to a lot of people. Everyone was excited. It's just a terrific event, and really happy to be there.
And it attracted attention from further west. I mean, there were numerous people through over a period of a couple of hours, actually, from after that event, going along Illinois Street and Green Street that I observed. So, I mean, and maybe that's just to campus, but it attracted people, not just from Urbana, for
Yeah,
sure.
good point. It started over on campus and then snaked through the streets and then ended up in downtown on Main Street, where the stage was set up and music and entertainment. So it's a growing event. It's terrific. It's a great way to be welcoming and see the response in a positive way. Kids, families, dogs, probably cats. Yeah, exactly. Obviously, candy and music and all the fun things that make parades great. So happy to be a part of it and thank the staff for putting it together and organizing. Just wanted to mention that the OSLAD grant went in for the Meadowbrook Playground, just thanks to the team that worked on that. Obviously, it was a large effort. It's a fairly large number and anticipating what we have to still do in fundraising, but I think we're now ready to engage in the fundraising side of that with the information, so we're very, very excited about that and keep moving that project along. I think last month I introduced the topics of e-bikes and where we all are. Since that time, went out and talked to several other individuals, planners in different organizations. I think there's an interest to get together to compare notes. I think there would be a desire to try to create more uniform codes or the ways we manage that. I think everyone's recognizing they're here, but there still could be some differences in how people use them and what the rules are, but the best way to start is to start and to start figuring out what people are doing, what we need, what's appropriate, what's reasonable. I guess in the end, there could still be reasons why there would be maybe different needs across the different agencies, but our goal, I think, is to try to find out where people are, what we can do to bring it together, and again, start to embrace, motorized vehicles that are appropriate for streets and for trails, as opposed to banning everything or looking the other way or just not getting a handle.
Tim,
So-
I noticed somebody with a motorized scooter going along one of the streets. Is that something that we're?
I think the scooters, is it stand-up type or was it more
It's
the
a stand-up-
motorcycle?
No, it's
Yes.
stand-up motorized
Right.
scooter.
I think probably just projecting, those will probably be the tough ones because they go faster and they're
Yep.
just a little bit different setup for what we would call recreational trails or, but
Okay.
it's a transportation mode. So could be they may be appropriate for street and not necessarily sidewalk or trail. Most bikes and vehicles are banned from sidewalks except in a few where there's no other way. So that we'll have yet to see. But I think kind of when I reached out to people, they kind of realized, oh, it's here. Are we ready? Are we up to speed? And again, there's a layer of ADA. We're not trying to restrict or control, but we do want to create a safe, reasonable atmosphere. So how can we sort of progress as a community, bringing the best of it along and controlling and managing any other concerns? They're, may be challenging. Obviously, it's sort of just arrived and there's varieties of different, modes of transportation. So I think getting a good handle, I think the Illinois Bike Summit, I think, does have a session on e-bikes. It's probably, my assumption is they're here and a more of a promotional, and the benefits, but we'll see what we can learn at the conference. Moving ahead, I think we just have a few updates on the Wandell Sculpture Garden. The Arts and Culture team met today. I think, in short, we spent most of our time looking at how do we fill in and augment January through April, the winter times. We have things slotted and planned, but just more emphasis, more, activities, things to sort of round out so you have, more than one thing maybe in each month. So we're really excited. Everything's been going really well. I know we just finally booked the, I think it's slated, I think for March, or I wrote March or April. I have the date in my book. I'd have to look it up. With Deke Weaver, Latrell Bright, and Jason Finkelman. So there'll be a really exciting program at Phillips that'll probably be a kind of a demonstration of arts and then also talking, sort of a dialogue and explanation. So that could be an interesting winter activity, and we're really excited with the high quality level of artists, those three in particular that have committed.
I think that was March, Tim.
March, I thought it was in March. But again, looking at March through April to get some things going, and again, we have some things, but always looking for more and how to pull that together and then start to promote it. Lastly, I think I mentioned the Bike Summit. Several staff will be attending, so we'll see what we can learn from that. It's both in person and online, kind of a Zoom format. So hopefully we'll see how many folks are back at the event and how it comes together. Lastly, I just want to mention, as part of the Bike Summit, there was a real effort to bring a man named Charles Mahone And he wrote some recent books you may be familiar with called Strong Towns. Really excellent planner. There are 3 public sessions. There was the one this morning at the City View, one on campus, and then there's one going on, I think, 5 to 7 this evening back at the City View facility, MTD's facility. But basically, you know, it's smart planning. It's interesting. I have to delve deeper into the books and learn a little more. But he spent about 90 minutes talking to the planners, more technical information, but really smart growth patterns for cities and kind of looking back at, you know, as we grow, what happens to the urban core, what happens on the outer edges, who really pays for a lot of that, and wouldn't surprise to know that often your lowest economic, you know, sectors end up paying for a lot of growth and development. This interesting, you know, fact that our cities continually change. We used to have, you know, a time in America where your poorest of poor were in the inner cities and the wealthier moved out. Then it flipped, people moving back in the inner core, pushing the, you know, less economically strong back to the edges, and now it's starting to even reverse again. So with all these moves and the cost, then we look at roads and how we go to the outer areas, bring in sanitary and roads, who pays for that, and then how long do municipal groups have to take to really recoup any tax benefits, and then are they really sustainable? So it was very, very interesting. One of my quick takeaways, you know, a lot of these innovative speakers give you little tips, and one of them was, you know, in any kind of situation, do the smallest thing you can do to make a situation better. And it made me think of this summer. You know, we've been looking at Crestview Park, the dynamics of that interesting park, what's going on. I think we did some survey work at multiple, you know, events, and there's probably some things we could actually probably add and do, but they're costly and they'll have to fit into our capital. And one of the suggestions, I think we did it last summer as well, but go out and paint T-ball lines and, you know, start creating very simple programs. So I thought, what an excellent idea that we just did. It didn't cost a whole lot. It was something, and until we could get something else, it's something you can depend on. So it's a lot of that kind of thinking. It has a practicality, and I sort of like that. So if you're interested, check out Strong Towns. There's different stuff on the internet. There's books. I think there's podcast even. I'll have to check back on that. But again, I appreciate the innovative thinking, the way we look. Obviously, I think there'll be trail opportunities because trails are one of those municipal amenities that as you go and grow, you need to keep reaching out. There's cost, and then there's long-term capital, and that phenomena of who pays and what does it really cost. Obviously, that debate goes on, but there was a lot of really good ideas, a lot of enthused planners at the session today. So I suppose that'll probably be some new things that we can look forward to. I can answer any questions if you have any others.
Thank you, Tim. Moving on to the President's report, in terms of upcoming meetings, November 1 is a board study session with the Diversity Lab report coming in. And are we going to try to include the audit in that meeting as well? Do we know yet when?
For November?
Yeah.
Well, just before I walked in here, I just got a rough draft from them. Haven't even got to open it to see what's there, but I mean, we're trying desperately to cling to our normal schedule.
Yeah. I mean, as you may recall, normally we try to do this at the October meeting, and it's running a little later.
Correct, yeah. Last year, I think it was a special meeting, the third week of October, so that was due to the foundation's audit, and of course, we did find out that doesn't hinge on our, with the new auditors, so that helps a smidge, but the fact of the matter, at the end of the day, the audit's behind by nearly 2 months.
Yeah.
Laura, were we targeting November study session for the presentation?
So November 1st at the study session, Sikich will be down here to present the audit
So
in person, answer questions.
So that November 1 study
November
session
1,
may be a pretty full meeting.
Yeah. I think we have 3
So
topics.
It's
I will not be here on November 1st.
Okay.
And then on November 8th, that too is a very full meeting in terms of various financial things. I mean, well, it's that time of year. I mean, we have a lot of business of that sort to deal with, and I'm not going to try to read all of these off. But there are a number of items going to be on that, so that's going to be a pretty full agenda for the regular board meeting next month as well. Moving on to liaison reports, the Finance Study Group did meet on October 7. We discussed a number of things that are in tonight's meeting, including the bridge project, possible funding of that, contribution by us, and the audit and the fact that it was behind a bit, and we discussed some of the potential for the levy options, which we're going to be taking up momentarily. And I don't know, were there other things in that have not come before the board by now? I think
we've already talked about the fact that that our audit and the foundation's audit are separate. So
yeah.
That
and
Jim wasn't at the meeting Monday, so I don't know what his response was or what their schedule is, but that's not our problem.
So the prior auditor insisted it should be there, and the current auditor has looked at the numbers and says it's not a matter that's of a big enough import to require that it be included in our audit.
We don't, they're not under our control. So.
Yeah. Well, they're neither under our control nor do they represent quite as the auditors have to decide whether it's significant. I forgot the exact phraseology, but this set of auditors decided no.
Yes.
So, I mean, it is actually a significant amount of money to us.
Yep.
But in terms of the audit, apparently not.
As my understanding is through several conversations within SICKH, you know, it wasn't just the person doing our audit or the person doing the foundation's audit. You know, it was discussed at various levels within SICKH, and it was in agreement that
So in an auditing
it's not
decision,
material.
essentially, an auditor's decision as opposed to a
Right.
money decision.
Yeah, there's a calculation they're supposed to make, but apparently the formula is not precise as to whether or not they find it to be significant as in compared to the size of the two things.
Seems unusual of the auditors to have it not be precise, but
I think the law is not quite precise.
Yeah. And
gives
our
them something to do.
the next Finance Study Group meeting will be on the 4th of November, so in between the two meetings in November. Beyond that, I don't think we have anything further. Policy Study Group.
We have not met.
Okay. And the Parks Foundation.
A couple things one thing that's fairly routine. Kelsey's working on the annual appeal and how she's going to structure that. They've been working on a prospective donor list for the new playground at Meadowbrook. I think the thing that I was the most excited about, and it picks up something that was going well for the foundation prior to the pandemic, and that's having small group meetings in homes to have more of a one-on-one kind of social and targeted conversation. And what they're proposing to do is have a small group events like that that are targeted at donors that are interested in specific issues. For example, like money for people who need help in going to programs and that sort of thing. And anything else that people are interested in, because different donors have different interests. So hopefully that will be starting, I would guess, sometime after the first of the year. So.
COVID permitting. I said COVID permitting.
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah.
And perhaps flu as well.
Yes.
Any other questions for Roger? And then the UPDAC planning study group is not met? Okay.
Nope, we don't need
Not
to.
until
Oh.
The spring
next year.
meeting,
Yep.
Under old business, the only item was anything we removed from the consent agenda, which was nothing, so we're on to new business.
I think we
And-
have our information on the tax information. I think Laura had followed up with the comments, and turn it back to you, Laura.
So in the packet is our worksheet, and if you turn it to page 2, we've summarized the options that we kind of walked and talked through. So for the estimated total property taxes to be levied for 2022, the 3 options that we kind of put together and we'll be deciding on this evening would be the 20%, 22.5%, and the 25%. That's in section 4 there. That's where I'm at on page 2. So those options, the 20%, I think, as we kind of talked through, would account for if the hospital were to resolve their settlement, but it really was slim. Didn't quite hit the mark, the 22.5. After some calculations, felt like a good fit at the 10,424,000. 25%. We just need to decide that if we need to go that far to the 10,618,000. We discussed before, the TIF 2 does expire December 31st, so we know that that's 15 million in new property tax. So we want to make sure.
15.
So,
15 million.
Yep.
Yes.
and it's the 25% that shows up in the black box as the number?
No.
No,
Oh,
we
it's
No.
decide whatever is decided is what will appear in the black box.
The 22.5 and 25.
Sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
I'm picking the 25, sorry. I'm already there.
Yeah.
Easy
It's-
way of
it's-
signaling there.
Whatever you vote on will go in the black box.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the middle,
What goes in the black box is the bigger one, right?
Is the bigger number.
That's what I want,
Yeah.
that's what I wasn't,
Yes.
so it's the,
Yes.
that's, okay, sorry.
it's
I should have,
it's the middle column.
Is the amount, the second box
Thanks.
is the percentage, the third box is how you're getting to that first one. And
gotcha. So this is the black box number.
Yes.
Yeah,
The
thank
middle
you.
column, exactly.
Sorry.
Yes,
Then-
it should have that heading, black box.
Right.
I'll make that happen next
Okay,
time.
then I might change my suggestion. I don't know.
Were
We
you
had
gonna
talked,
go
well,
to-
we had talked about trying to get around 29
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And we are around 29.
Yeah.
Well,
In fact, almost 30.
yes, the 22.5 was not one of the choices that we originally.
At
yeah,
that
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And you've
yeah.
added
So
this
so indeed,
Between-
this was fine-tuned.
at our request.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that is so close as to, be all that different from 30% in people's
In mind.
minds. I don't know.
I think it's the public perception that we really need to be
Yes.
concerned with, because the 29.8 is gonna cover what we need.
Yes.
And, I mean, why,
I-
if you were given a choice between 29.8 and 32.2, if you wanted to look low, you'd pick, pick the-
Well, 22.5 is not a magic number either. It could be
Right.
22.6 or,
Sure.
whatever, or
Right.
22.4. But I think at the Finance Study Group, we we leaned toward that middle number, but obviously we don't bind the board.
Yeah, I would support the 22.5, which appears as 29.83%
Me too.
with in the ads.
It's a fine dance, so to speak. Obviously, we want to cover ourselves.
Right.
We want to be respectful of the black box. Don't want to overly excite anybody if we can avoid it. Some of it's hard to explain, but we manage our way through it each year.
Yeah, and we haven't had pitchforks and, lighted torches at
No.
the door, so, I mean, not that I would want to push it to a limit, but,
Right.
I think people are slowly beginning to grasp that their taxes don't go up by that amount.
I think
And that's really the critical issue. So when the hammer doesn't fall, they say, oh, okay.
Right.
And a point that I made at the finance study group meeting was that what we can assure people is we are trying to be their stewards to capture all of the money that we can, which can have the effect, it may not, but can have the effect of actually reducing their tax.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Good point.
And we don't get more. We're going to get what we get. We
Yes.
just have to
Yeah.
cover
Right.
the bases.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's, to me, if I were a taxpayer, that's what I would want to hear, is that we can't raise it beyond, and we won't get beyond
Right.
a certain amount, no matter when we could put 63% in there, but if we're not going to get it,
Right.
If we could get one message across, I think that would be it.
Yep.
Right.
That
Yep.
it is a
Well,
formula that we don't control.
and-
It's what it
Yes.
is.
And the piece that goes along with that, that I hope the public understands, in this crazy process, you have to vote on something like this, not knowing what the final
Right.
numbers are.
Right.
Yeah.
Differential only and.
Yes.
I mean, it's, well,
we should call it the best guess vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best guess box.
and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
in times
I like
past, we have had things not turn out the way they were supposed to. I mean, and only because we had allowed some wiggle room did we come out.
Right, and I think the other thing that I'm hoping that people are beginning to understand is that if we don't ask for it, we don't get it.
Yeah.
We don't get it that time, and we never get it. There's no going back.
It's gone.
And I think that's almost the scariest part of it all, because,
Right.
Gives me the most anxiety.
It's the threat.
I don't get it, it does.
Well,
Yeah.
and then there's other factors such as tax disputes and other processes that ultimately impact your number
Yep.
that we don't have a really good handle of knowing what's out there. For example, if you knew everybody and exactly, you could do a takeoff and look at, okay, if we didn't get these, this would be it.
Yep.
But we don't know until it's at the end of the process. So I think we do a relatively great job at analyzing each error, putting care to it, being aware of all the, pieces that affect the outcomes, and then make a good recommendation.
Right.
Last year, the black box was 24.8, and we ended up with 3.79.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
A little bit of difference there.
But
Well,
it's a,
yeah, but
Yeah.
we don't know what's gonna go on in the legal system.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, there are too many unknowns for us
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be playing around with anything
I
like.
would say the
Well-
best thing we can do is have good discussions at a public meeting like this to try to educate anyone listening
Yep.
or anybody that might be open to understanding how it works.
Well, I
I'd
heard some expressions of support for a certain number, so.
Yeah, and I don't have my yellowed sheet.
I would
So-
move to approve Resolution 2022-12, determining the amounts estimated to be necessary for the 2022 levy payable in 2023 upon taxable property of $10,424,495.
Second.
It's moved and seconded by Meredith. Is there any further discussion or any questions? Hearing no indication of that, this does require a roll call vote. We'll start with Cedric.
I,
Aye.
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 And that carries unanimously with all 5 commissioners voting. And so we will be doing the hearing then with these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll also be reading them in the paper.
Yeah. I wonder if it's made a difference about how many people actually see that, since the paper is online as well as
That's a good question,
coming in
maybe.
my mailbox. Because I would think you might be less likely to skim through all the way to the end
Yeah.
online, whereas in the paper you might be
Mm-hmm.
at least waving it before your eyes.
Bullseyed.
Yep, yep.
Yep, a good point.
That's any consolation.
Okay, the next up is introduction of the preliminary 2023 capital improvement budget.
Planning has it. I think they're ready to roll.
Okay, I'll just kind of walk through. This is our draft capital budget for next year. We have a capital project team that meets every month, and past few months we've been going through our prioritized list, and then now the draft for next year. At next month's meeting, we'll take the final draft for your approval for 2023, and then we'll plan on doing a review of our 5-year capital plan at that time as well, just to inform the board of where we're looking for the future. And so starting with revenues, we're looking at a little over $966,000 from bond sales, tributes and donations, and then ADA projects. And kind of typically with every capital year, we usually have one targeted project, one or maybe two at most. So 2023 is actually a combination that's compiling funds from our 2022 Prairie Play, and then we also are compiling funds in 2023 capital to create our total project budget that would then go along with our OSLAD grant for construction of Prairie Play. So you'll see that noted throughout the expenditure section and some of our regular recurring lines. And so ADA projects, typically we get about $55,000 for capital out of the $65,000, and we have that going towards Prairie Play. And then we have some of our regularly seen expense lines, tributes and donations, cost of issue for the bond, and then one of our larger regular recurring expenditures is vehicles and equipment. This year with our schedule, we have two pieces of equipment that are two of the more expensive replacements, one being the backhoe and the other being an arbor lift truck. So it's the big articulating boom lift with the box truck that then would have the mulch material go into it. So that one we have $300,000 for both of those pieces of equipment, and then a series of our regular occurring lines at the regular expenditure level. So hazard trees, construction crew and technology at $10,000 each, operations and recreation small equipment at $5,000 each, our regular mechanical replacement $10,000. And then trails projects, this is starting to compile funds for a future project, and in 2024 you will likely see some more South Ridge path work items. So this is starting to put in funds.
So what's to be done at Southridge?
Replacing the path.
The small, narrow
It's an
asphalt path.
asphalt.
It goes around the park. I think it's original. Yeah.
Oh, I guess that is right. I was thinking it was like a sidewalk, but it isn't, is it? No.
Well, it's a narrower width. It's not currently an 8-foot wide trail. So it's a little wider sidewalk that hopefully we can upgrade.
Hardscapes and fencing, it's something we've been putting $150,000 to in the last couple of years. This one is split between two projects, one being the Prairie Play replacement that we're currently anticipating $100,000 of that going towards, and then the remaining $50,000 would also currently be anticipated for the South Ridge path work. And then we have our regular UIC capital improvement line, and then $250,000 towards Meadowbrook Prairie Play replacement, And that leaves us with a fairly typical contingency. Usually we try to keep it between $50,000 and $75,000. And as the budget stands in draft form here, we are at $66,565. So our project team, capital team, will meet again before the next board meeting. We'll review our draft one more time before we take it to the board next month, and then start finalizing that 5-year plan that we'll also bring to your attention as well at that time.
Any questions for Andy on that? And again, there's no action to be taken here on this tonight. Moving on then to King Park Heritage Trail Site discussion.
Just some updates from staff. Wanted to make sure the board's fully informed on our intents of what we'd like to do at King Park. We have a couple of things moving along at the same time. Kind of rolling backwards, when you recall a number of years ago when we installed the sculpture along Lincoln Avenue on that east side of the park, byways to equality. I think the intent was to focus on the sculpture, and then later other enhancements were at least in the vision of how do we make, that part of the park very attractive, create a sort of a gateway park concept as you come into Urbana along Lincoln Avenue. What can we do in what I call the front of the park, because it faces Lincoln Avenue, which is the gateway to the university, gateway into Urbana. So we've got some really good ideas with that, but just kind of rolling another piece into it. As you know, Janet Sosby's been working with, and Corky have been working with the Heritage Trail Group. There was a concept and a kind of a working group brought together to help identify all the important African-American historical sites throughout Champaign County, where things happen, different towns, different layers, different eras, and put up a really wonderful report that highlights all of these areas. And I think the idea was to at least set that up, hope that the appropriate groups in those areas identify those sites and start moving. One of the sites in Urbana, certainly at King School, King Park, the Ellis subdivision, and that neighborhood is of interest. I think our thoughts were all along, even prior to the Heritage Trail, is how do we tell that story? It would be a great idea to add some of that into King Park. Another layer is the Urbana Rotary Club, and their peace building efforts are really interested in some sort of peace pole that really speaks to kind of a symbol of anti-violence, how Urbana can come together and rally for peaceful resolutions. So our staff approach, and what I want to update the board tonight on, is, how do we bring all of these pieces together? Can we create a gateway sculpture plaza that would really have high interest, that would be a site that you could pull over, learn more about the park? Could we use the park as a throughway to have exhibits or storyboards or some sort of experience? Can we work with King School? Can we work with the youth? Can we work with the neighborhood in putting together an exciting interpretive plan for that park? Obviously, the sculpture and the plaza and all that would give a lot of visuals. On the west side of the park is Goodwin Avenue, that also is connected to the bike trail that goes from Bradley all the way to campus. So if you think about it, it's a pretty critical park to get people in and around. As you come into Urbana, you could experience it. As you're going back and forth the campus to the north part of Urbana, you have good access. Should mention one of the other improvements. We've been talking with the city of Urbana, and any road improvements along Lincoln that would kickstart a reason to start tearing things up again. And they do have plans to do some street improvements and to widen the pathway so that we could get a bicycle pedestrian corridor. There's a lot of practical reasons. We have a lot of new housing up on North Lincoln. It's somewhat difficult to get to campus or anywhere else if you don't have good, trail networks. You could probably slide over to Goodwin and go south, but it'd be nice to be able to come right down Lincoln Avenue. And then again, the Helene Gateway is much further south along Lincoln Avenue. So as you come into Urbana, it'd be kind of nice before you hit the tracks to have something that would show well and really, speak loudly of what we're all about here. So I think the plan is to try to pull all of these elements together, move them together. We know the city of Urbana is very intent on getting something in Urbana. So we've been talking with their staff and the mayor about, hey, we've got a great project. So I think Kelsey and I are meeting with Darius White from the city, start talking about any opportunities for maybe the city to be a partner. We know they've budgeted some funds for the Heritage Trail, so if it's possible, I think what we're lacking is, could we hire someone that could help pull these visions together, put a plan together, and then move on who implements what piece of it. So that's kind of where we're headed. But if there's comments or questions or anything that the board would like to know, let us know. Certainly we'll have much more information once we start, moving on this. We think the time is right. I think the street improvements are slated, let's say 2024 or shortly after that. But getting a plan together now so that we're ready for all of that and engaging with the neighborhoods, the school, could be a really good opportunity for us to do some really fun and interesting things. Anything that we recommend or promote for the park that we need to pay for certainly would have to roll into capital, but there could be grants or other opportunities. I think there's high potential for donor interest with this, and I think I alerted the foundation at the meeting yesterday, this could be a project the foundation might want to have a role with. So we're pretty excited. We don't have a picture. We don't have a plan. So it's this loose description and introducing that discussion. The other important real thing, I think, is to remind Urbana residents we do have a plan, and we are working on it. Champaign's moving ahead on theirs, and I think, I know the mayor told me she was concerned that if there wasn't a plan for Urbana, it wouldn't take very long for people to start asking questions or be concerned. So we want to get out there and let folks know we have something, and we think it's really neat because it ties a lot more together than just our site. And it's a project we could have maybe quietly done and added something interesting and maybe missed this other community opportunity. So as we gear up, get more information, start moving toward that. If things could work out, we'd love to enter sometime next year into some level of planning. It's probably preliminary. That's how we tend to do our work, preliminary planning, get a plan, and then you start putting together the capital realities of getting it in place. So if we can get a good partnership going, where the city gets the street and the trail done, and we take on the park, and we get working with the school and the neighborhood, it could be, again, really nice outcome and something we could be very proud of. And then lastly, I think there is an intent that after these sites get to, established, that you could reasonably make a trail. It wouldn't necessarily be a paved trail to all the sites with direct, but you could get in a car, or in some cases, our case, you could get on a bike or walk over to the park and have that experience. So that's kind of where we are now. If you have thoughts, let us know, and we'll just keep working until we land on something that we think really will capture Urbana's interest. That's all I had on the topic. Did anything else to add from staff in our discussions?
Hopeful the city of Urbana gets that grant. It'll go from King Park all the way up to Killarney Avenue, and it'll be a 5-year window once they get the grant, if they get the grant.
That sounds good, Tim. I think that engagement with the school and neighborhood are going to be absolutely key to this for
Yep.
it to be successful.
Absolutely.
And I mean, this is related, but in the You Belong Here report, you mentioned the seating plaza.
Yes.
That's separate from this?
That would be it. That's what
That
we're
is what
calling the
But so
kind of
is,
plaza.
and I guess that's to my question. That's something the community wants.
I think I'm going to say it wasn't a community request, but our planning going way back to acquire the properties along Lincoln, to open up and get the view shed from Lincoln to Goodwin. Those were all in our long-term master plans. We achieved all of those. Then we started, developing that front of the park, and then got the sculpture in place. And then the next thought was another phase to really improve it. For example, the piece itself is a wonderful piece of art. It has little vignettes, I call them, of different historical factors, but you won't know that until you get up close to it. There's not an easy accessible route, or you can walk across the grass and go right up to it. We're not keeping people away, but for it to be a little more accessible and intuitive, it probably needs some help. We thought of other creative things. Maybe there's QR codes and that links you to an interview with the artist. So in their words, they could put together the story of, the meaning of the piece. So it could be a layered kind of a outcome where there's lots of pieces and, can get more information. I could see the schools getting involved, opportunities for learning, and maybe there's a component or something they do at the school. And we thought the whole park with the trail linking Lincoln to Goodwin really creates that spine of the park. And so you have opportunities along the way. And I think our staff, I know at least, was interested in this sort of experience that you get on either end and then something along the way. The idea of even simple story walks, you could put in, semi-permanent markers and tell different stories, cultural history, neighborhood stories, things like that. So that's where we want to kind of get all the brains together and really think of a rich plan that really pulls the nuances of all these different things out and then gives points for different groups to start working on. It isn't necessarily all on the UPD, to provide everything. But I think if we work together, we could have a really dynamic, piece that we'd be really proud of.
I know when you and I and Corky and Janet met, we felt like, this really can't be, we can facilitate the process, but we really need to have community
Yes.
involvement from the neighborhood and people that have been involved at various levels with the King
Right.
Park history and process.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first time this was brought, and I can remember as a staff person, this was brought to us was Carol Emmons when she was on city council. And she thought more should be done to tell the story of that sculptural piece. And one of the ideas that we kind of collectively talked about was this concept of a seating plaza with interpretation. But time has passed, and so I think it's important to really start that process now of involving the community to decide on what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess I just feel like I have memories of like there being disappointment around
Yes,
around
there
it.
was.
So just hearing seating plaza doesn't make me get excited.
Got it,
Now
yeah.
what you're talking about is
Yeah.
much more exciting, but
Well, and I think what we did here was they wanted it to be more prominent.
Yeah.
Main attraction.
Right.
And that's kind of where the whole seating plaza, it's a spot to go.
it's also a really busy, loud road. So that's
Yeah.
also what I'm questioning.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it's not a place I would want to.
No,
So I guess I just to echo Rogers, it sounds like that's the path we're on, but making sure we're involving that community
Yeah.
and the school and
Right.
what makes sense.
I think it's important to identify leadership at the school and
Mhm.
leadership in the community.
Right.
And give them as much power in the process as
Right.
possible. And as much as we can step back without, without completely letting it kind of go and go off the track.
Right.
I think that needs to happen. I think that leadership needs to have
Mm-hmm.
as much power as we can give.
Right. I agree with that, Roger. And I think, it can't be something the Park District conjured up and
Yep.
this is it. So it's really got to kind of come from the neighborhood and, be a variety of ideas. And that's what's neat is there's a number of pieces that you could create that would give that depth and that ownership. So I think we're really excited about this. This could really, be something interesting for Urbana.
Is there a neighborhood association over there?
Well, there's the King Park Adopt a Park Neighborhood Association, which is loosely kind of our Jetty Roads committee.
Yeah.
So I had
okay.
talked, starting 2 years ago, with our former commissioner from that neighborhood, Shonda Cunningham, about this idea. And I think it was something that the, Jetty Roads, planning group was interested in, but it needs to be even more inclusive. There's, for example, we know Dr. Evelyn Underwood has written or is in the process of writing a history of the Ellis subdivision. So we know there's probably a narrative text that's out there that we can start to work out of. I've talked with the Urbana Free Library. They're really excited in partnering with us, their staff. They said, we can do all the archival research if you need photos or images so that's another way to bring on another partner and their staff. I think the city's interested in, for obvious and every reason, making Urbana a place that you'd want to live, work, and do business in. And then certainly the users at the park and the school, all the different ways that could help and educational opportunities that could come out of that each year for students to do and work on. So probably the key is how do we get started? How much is, what's it going to take, and how do we identify and bring everyone together? And I think we're okay if there's another group leading, we're okay with that, you know, if that's what it takes or that's what emerges. My sense is we've had sort of the vision and a way to tap and bring people along. I think we're equally comfortable being the leaders with that. But I think the goal would be get folks together and kind of see what emerges out of that. And there's no definite timeline, but we want to start now. What we understand is the city's budgeted some money of the ARPA funds for the Heritage Trail. So our thought, our team thought was, if we have a vision, an idea, let's pitch that, see if it attracts. If it does, let's move toward that. If there's a better project, we're all for helping. I haven't heard of any, but you know, we're open, and starting the dialogue might come up with some, you know, different ideas. So we'll keep everyone updated as we go. Just didn't want the board to not understand kind of the multiple layers of all the pieces that are potentially that could come together and really make this a great site. I think that's all I had on the heritage.
Okay, unless there are any other questions, that moves us down to action on any new business removed from the consent agenda, of which there was none. And takes us then to Roman numeral 9, comments from commissioners. No additional comments this evening, okay?
Mark it down.
Noted.
All righty. Well, that being the case, I believe we have exhausted the entirety of our agenda, and I will declare us adjourned.
All right. Thanks. See everybody next time.
Yep.